Hi, welcome to episode 4 of the Adventures of Foodini podcast. I thought today I would talk about fight or flight mode. I think it is an important topic because a lot of kids and adults with a disability suffer from anxiety. Specifically children and adults that are non-speaking, I find suffer from higher levels of anxiety, and I think that's for obvious reasons. If you have trouble communicating or an inability to communicate, you just are naturally going to be more anxious. It's kind of, if you go into a foreign country and you don't speak the language, you're going to be anxious. It's just the way it is. I think, like for Phoenix, he has very good receptive language, so he understands exactly what we are saying, but it's still such a struggle when you can't say it back. And I kind of relate to that. My grandparents on my father's side, they're Dutch, and for the longest time, as a child, they would speak Dutch around me. I can't speak it. I've never been able to, but they would speak Dutch around me, and then they would like mash it in with English. So that's the only way I can really describe it, there would be like bits of English and Dutch in what they were saying. And so as I grew, I understood what they were saying, if that makes sense. But I couldn't speak it. So I guess it kind of is similar to that receptive language in that, like, you understand what they're saying, but you just can't answer back in a way that they'll understand. So I try to find like parallels with these things. It makes it a little bit easier for me to, I guess, empathize with Phoenix, and that is kind of the best way for me to describe that for me personally. But he obviously, as if you've listened to the previous episode regarding his communication abilities, he's quite good now at communicating using different methods. But yeah, fight or flight it's a tricky one. You can't really do all that much about it because there's so many factors, there's so many variables. The world is never going to be completely routine or completely the same or completely predictable, and it's that lack of predictability that generally causes the anxiety and the fight or flight response. Normally people will say fight, flight, freeze. I haven't come across the freeze element with Phoenix, so I can't really relate to that. But yeah, his go-to is fight or flight. And if he's in a situation where he can't flight, he will fight. And that becomes aggression, whether it's hurting himself or hurting somebody else, or property damage sometimes. And he doesn't need to have been feeling threatened, so to speak, to go into that mode. It could be something as simple as he is in pain and he can't articulate it in that moment. And so generally when he's in pain and things like that, he will take it out on you or something else. And I think that is because he wants you to understand that he's in pain, like he wants to inflict pain. It's almost like transference, I feel, in a way. Like he wants to show you his pain by inflicting pain. And so it's not the best way to go about it, but in that moment of overwhelm, and that's the thing, a lot of these kids have methods of communication like an AAC, but when they're in that zone, they can't. They just, everything else shuts down, and it's literally just fight or flight response. And for the longest time, Phoenix has lived in fight or flight mode, and that has been really hard to break him out of. It has taken a very long time and a lot of effort, but also just time, like just letting him, I don't know, calm down and, into himself. It is definitely, it's a tricky one because it's not something you can kind of force it's a little bit like healing. Everyone heals at a different pace. Everyone grieves at a different pace. And so for him, trying to get him to a place where he feels safe in his environment and in his just everyday life has been very tricky. I won't get into into really deep explanations on that at this point. I will do an episode at some stage where I dive into, I guess, the traumas that he's been through. It's a very delicate topic, and I don't know. I just feel like I'm not quite ready to talk about that. It's very hard to, I guess, live with every day as it is, and having those constant reminders when certain things happen, it is quite tricky. But yeah, fight or flight mode, it's a tricky beast, and in certain situations, Phoenix would just run away if that's possible. So there's been a lot of times where he's been in certain environments and people have gone, oh, we're trying to work out the function of the behaviour. Why is he running? Why is he he's scared. He's scared and he's anxious, and something is happening that is causing him to not want to be there. Whether it's something that is malicious or not, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If he's uncomfortable, he's uncomfortable. So it could be something as simple as the lights are too bright, so he's trying to escape those. It's too noisy. There's too much activity around him. He doesn't want to be there. And then it can obviously go to those more malicious things, like somebody is trying to hurt him or is treating him poorly, things like that. So Phoenix definitely, he doesn't like to feel trapped, and that is something that I don't think anyone likes to feel. So that's what I mean when I say he's no different to anyone else. But if he is trapped in a situation and he can't run away, he will attack. And I don't really blame him. That's what else is he supposed to do? It's one of those things that, you wish was not happening and didn't happen, but you can also understand exactly why it happens. And it's, people say, oh, he needs to be punished for that, or, you need to discipline him, or he's not doing it to hurt you. He's not doing it maliciously. That is a cry for help. And in that moment, he has no other way of doing it. Every other part of his brain shuts down, and he just gets into that primitive mode of, I need to survive. And when he attacks someone, it's not necessarily because they're the problem. He has been known to do that. If somebody is hurting him and he's trying to defend himself, then of course he's going to do that. But often when he attacks people, he actually attacks his safe people, and he does that because he knows that they understand and that they're not going to leave him, and they're going to try to work out what the problem is and help him. So it's a bit of a backhanded compliment. It means that he actually loves you and he feels safe with you. So it's just, people will often see that as an attack, a personal attack, and think, well, he doesn't like me, he hates me, why is he hurting me? That's the only reason he could be hurting me. But it's actually the opposite. And he feels comfortable enough to inflict his cries for help on you. And so it's a really hard thing to explain to people because it does seem so backwards. But if you can't talk and you can't get your point across, what would be your next go-to, I guess? I did I went to a convention type thing where I got to sit down and listen to Tony Attwood talk. And he's amazing, by the way. If you ever get an opportunity to go and see him talk, the best thing that I ever did. He gives you these different perspectives on things, and one of these activities that we did, he told us to try to communicate with each other something really basic, like hello, right? So you wave to each other. And then he would ask you to say, where's my hat, to each other without talking. And then he would just over time step it up to make it something more complicated. Like the next one I think was something like, your sister is over there by the door and wants to talk to you. How do you communicate that without talking? And so, you're watching everyone around the room and it's just like this weird sign language that everyone's trying to do, and these big like body movements and things. Like, obviously we're not talking, and you can't, and people are like, oh, you can just write it down, you can just do this. And he was like, that's all well and good, but now try to communicate that complex thing without hand gestures, without writing, without words. And it was a real eye-opener, because like, well, what the hell do you do to communicate that? Like, there's nothing left. And that is the case for a lot of non-speaking people. They have nothing, absolutely nothing to communicate. And people are still wandering around, wondering why they attack people, or they get frustrated really easily, or they're having constant meltdowns. Of course you're literally having a mental breakdown because you can't communicate. You're trapped inside yourself. And I just think, what a horrific way to live. And for people to not want to try and give these people methods of communication other than talking, trying to push and pressure people that are non-speaking into speaking when they're just physically not capable of doing it. It just blows my mind that there needs to be other methods of communication. Like, who cares how they communicate? Obviously, you don't want them communicating with physical aggression. That is something that you don't want. But if you're not going to give them any other choices, that is just, it's almost like human nature that's what comes next. If we get frustrated all the time, people get frustrated and think, oh, I really could punch a wall right now, but we don't do it because we have other ways of coping and other ways of getting our frustrations out. And a lot of the time it's talking it out. That's what is kind of ingrained in us. Oh, don't get violent, just have a conversation and you can work it out. But people that can't speak can't do that. So yeah, I just try to get that kind of perspective across to people, because I feel like there'd be such a deeper understanding of why this is happening. And instead of punishing these kids and these people for that, in that moment, you've got to try and work out what they need and how to provide that to them in a safe and effective manner. And there is a lot of problem solving that goes into this life. And look, I get tired all the time, especially mentally and emotionally. It's like, oh my goodness, I've got a whole day of trying to work things out. I don't know if I can do it. But I think about, Phoenix doesn't have a choice. That's his life. He lives that every single day, and he still gets up every single day with a smile on his face, and he powers through it and just wants to live his best life. So I don't have an excuse at the end of the day. Like, it's just, that's why I always say I just am so in awe of him all the time, and I'm so proud of him, and he's just so brave and resilient, because it must just be a life just full of scary things, because everything is so unknown, and it just you just don't know if the day is going to cause anxiety or not. So I'm constantly trying to balance that out so that he's got a good level of coming out of his comfort zone and trying new things, but also a really good level of predictability and ensuring that he's comfortable, and that also ensures his willingness to push through that lack of comfort zone. But yeah, so that's kind of like fight and flight mode. It's in everyday life. As I say, he went through quite a few years there where he literally lived in that mode, and it was awful. And just, he was so hyper vigilant all the time. He was always on edge. He couldn't relax, and it drained the life out of him. It was something that was, I hope I never ever have to watch again. it's taken us years to get him back to where he is. And it's such a joy watching him where he is now, and especially knowing what he's been through. It really puts a lot of things in perspective, and it just makes you really appreciate the little things. But yeah, fight or flight mode, I find Phoenix does abscond if he, as I say, if he has the option of flight, he will choose that over fight. And I think that also shows that want to not hurt people. If he has a choice, he's going to choose the option that doesn't hurt people. And sometimes, like, he does abscond, and most of the time when he absconds, it's because something has triggered it. It's not just because he wants to go for a run. There's obviously times, there's always a reason for it. He doesn't just do it. Sometimes it is he can't communicate what he wants to do, so he runs. Like, we went out to iPlay a couple of weeks ago, and he hadn't been able to go on the Dodgem cars in there because they had been closed. And trying to explain that to him when they're right there, it's not easy, because he's like, well, they're right there, why can't I go on them? Very literal thinking. And so the next time we went out, he just found an opportunity, and he went for a run, and he's jumped the fence and gone straight into the Dodgem cars, and they weren't running, so that was all good. But that is an example of him going for a run, which isn't really flight mode. He's just like, I want that, and you're not letting me have it, so I'm going to run off and go and get it. So that's more like a communication barrier type situation. But if he's scared, and he decides to go for a run, it's a whole different ball game. So when he's in that fight or flight mode and he goes running, I wish I knew what it felt like for him and what he is thinking, seeing, hearing, but this is what I think he's seeing and what he's hearing. I don't think he is hearing anything. I think he's literally, his ears turn off, and I'm not saying that like in a funny way, like when your kids, you're like, oh, selective hearing, they're just not listening. I actually genuinely think his ears turn off. And I feel like his sight becomes almost like tunnel vision, and he can only focus on what's in front of him. And when he's in that mode, everything is heightened, like his blood pressure rises, his heart rate rises. And he just, it's like primitive, like he goes wild, and in those moments, it's very dangerous, because there's absolutely nothing you can do to recall him. He won't come back. He's just got like this one-track mind. It's like every other thing around him is blocked out, and he can only focus on whatever his mission is. And so a lot of that comes from his PTSD as well. It's very tricky. I've got PTSD too, and mine comes from something completely different to some extent, but I have had a couple of instances where I've blacked out, but my body's continued to work. So I was in a shopping centre where I used to work, and certain songs trigger my PTSD because I listened to a lot of those songs when I was going through what I went through, and so I can't listen to them anymore. And one of them came up over the PA, and of course I can't switch it off. If it happens in the car on the radio or something like that, I can just switch the channel. But because it was something I couldn't control, I blacked out. And when I came to, I was outside, and I don't remember how I got there. So when I say blacked out, I didn't like fall to the ground blacked out. All my senses switched off, and my body went into that like survival mode of, let me get you out of here and find a way to get you out of here. And it did, but I don't have any memory of it. And I think it's the same for Phoenix when he gets into that flight mode. He doesn't know what he's doing, and that's why he does a lot of dangerous things. He climbs up on roofs and runs out in front of traffic, and because he's not actually seeing any of his surroundings or acknowledging any of it. And because he doesn't respond to people too when he's in that mode. It's just a weird thing. It's a weird thing to witness. But when you understand how that kind of affects them and how they function in that moment, it is helpful, because there's no point in wasting your breath trying to recall them and things like that. It's just not going to work. So in those moments, you really just have to spring into action and figure out the best way to life preserve, really, and make sure that they're safe. And after the fact, whenever he's had one of those runs, he's very calm. He's very quiet, and it's just a very strange thing to witness. But it almost is like he's fulfilled, but it's not quite that. So yeah, the flight mode is, I feel, the most dangerous when it comes to preserving his life, because it's the most unpredictable. When he fights, it's pretty much the same stuff. He scratches, he pinches, and that's pretty much all he does. He doesn't really kick, he doesn't headbutt, he doesn't bite, thank goodness. But yeah, it's more predictable for the person that's trying to help him anyway. And generally you can diffuse that a lot quicker once you understand what's going on. But yeah, so that's fight or flight mode, and it's something that's very common with special needs kids, and even kids that can talk. You still have kids all the time that are running away from situations because they don't know how to handle it emotionally or mentally. So, I mean, how many of us run away from our problems? Probably all of us. So it's not, it's not weird at all. It's just that there's different levels of intensity when it comes to special needs kids, and specifically non-speaking individuals. So yeah, I hope that has shone a little bit of a light and helped you to understand a little bit more about fight or flight when it comes to special needs kids and adults. I'm sure it still continues on into adulthood. I mean, Phoenix is almost a teenager and he's still doing it. So, but yeah, it's all about a safe place, a safe space, and trying to help with predictability to the best of your ability. It's not something that can be done all the time. Things change, but there's always a reason for it. Behaviour's communication, and there's always a reason for it. At least with Phoenix, there is always a reason for it. It's just trying to work out what that reason is, and being able to focus long enough to work out what that reason is, because it's hard. But, if anyone can do it, it's the parent of the child that they're trying to help. So I think that is pretty much all I can kind of get into with fight or flight. So we will call that a day. But until next time, be kind to yourself.